left heaven. And that's why they're innocent. And that's why you're innocent. And you have to see them as innocent. And you can't get away from that because of the way that the mind works. If you could get down deep enough into the unconscious mind, then you would find out that there's really just one of us. It's kind of like the Hindus say, there's just one ego appearing as many. So we look out there and we see, 7 billion plus people. Well, that's what the Hindus call the world of multiplicity. And it's all illusion, and it's not true. And there's a reality that is just beyond the veil, and it's everywhere. And it's a constant state. So you have unreality, which is always changing. Then you have reality, which is a constant. And it doesn't change. That's what Jesus was talking about 2,000 years ago, when he was talking about building your house upon the rock instead of on the sand. The sand is always blowing away, and it's always shifting and changing, and the rock stays the same. It doesn't change. So the truth was the truth 2,000 years ago. The truth is still the truth today. The truth will still be the truth 2,000 years from now, and it doesn't shift or change, and it's not subject to our interpretation. The truth is the truth, whether we understand and agree with it or not. And that's the position of the Course in Miracles. Now, of course, some people aren't going to like that idea because they want to find their truth.
Their own truth.
Yes, but the Course is saying, no, there's only one truth, and it's the same for everyone. And the ego's first law of chaos is that the truth is different for everyone. Because the ego is always trying to trick you, and it's a very clever illusionist, and it wants to keep you here. Because not being here would be the end of the ego. And the ego doesn't want that, and will always try to convince you that you're a body. In fact, that's the Course's definition of temptation. If you look in the final section of the text of the Course, which is called Choose Once Again, it practically gives you the Course's definition of temptation, which is a little bit different than the way that people normally think about it. It starts right off by saying temptation has one lesson it would teach in all its forms, wherever it occurs. It would persuade the Holy Son of God he is a body, born in what must die, unable to escape its frailty, and bound by what it orders him to feel. So now the body is telling you what to feel, exactly the opposite of the way that it should be. You should be able to tell your body what to feel. And the way that you do that is you have to shift, once again, to a place of cause and not effect. So, let's say that I'm feeling some pain in my knee. And I think maybe I'm getting arthritis or something. Well, the first thing I have to realize is that that pain is not really in my knee, it's in my mind. And that's where the projection of your body is coming from. It's actually a projection that is coming from your mind, just like everything else. So, let's say I hold my hand up in front of my face here. What is that really? Well, that is part of the same projection as that table over there. And it's no more real, and you don't have to take it any more personally than that table over there. Which is why Jesus says in the Course, the body is outside of us and not our concern. So he didn't identify with his body. After a while, he didn't think of his body as being him, and we don't have to think of our bodies as being us either. We don't have to identify with the body. I mean, you wouldn't confuse yourself with being your car. And yet you recognize that if your car is going to run properly, you put good things in it, like oil and gas and things like that. Well, you don't have to take your body personally either. You could say, okay, that's just a vehicle that I use temporarily to get around in the dream. And if I want it to work, then I'm going to put good things in it, and I'm going to take care of it. But that doesn't mean that I think that it's me. It's just a tool.
Could you say the body is an extension of the ego?
Yeah, well, the Course would use the word projection. Of the ego, and it kind of reserves the word extension for God and His kingdom and the extension of love. So you have a thought system of love that comes from the Holy Spirit, and when you use that thought system, the Course would use the word extending or extension of love. And when you're thinking with the ego and teaching separation or coming from a place of fear or anger, then the Course would use the word projection. And the Course is very clear about these things. A lot of people think that the Course is vague and that it's hard to understand. But the Course is actually very clear about what it's saying. And it comes out many, many times in what my teachers in my books describe as definitive ideas, definitive sentences. So, for example, one would be that the Course says there is no world. That's an idea that's hard to get away from. It says there is no world. And it doesn't be vague about it. It doesn't say there is no world, yeah, but maybe. It says there is no world. This is the central idea of the Course, that nothing here is true. And that's why the Course is a purely non-dualistic philosophy. Because it's saying of the two seeming worlds, the world of God and the world of man, only the world of God is true. And nothing else is true, period. And these are the kinds of statements that you can't get away from. I used to do a bunch of podcasts with a friend of mine in Florida. His name's Gene Bogart.
And it's still available on iTunes?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. We did about 50 of them. I think he still has them available. I'm not positive about that. But he used to say, if you want to know what the Course says, maybe you should go by what it says. And you have all these definitive statements in the Course that are very clear and really define what the Course is saying.
Why is such a thick book? Is it a lot of repetition?
You have to have repetition. The truth is simple, but the ego is very complicated.
Oh, so it has to hear it over and over and over again.
Yes, the ego must be undone.
Like a...
Yes, and the repetition in A Course in Miracles is ingenious. I mean, it's been said that the text of the Course is 6 pages repeated 100 different ways.
But it's necessary.
That repetition is absolutely necessary. And you'll find that as the ego is undone, you'll go back and you'll read something in the Course that you know that you've read before, but it's like you never saw it before. You're always getting these ideas on deeper and deeper levels. And the words haven't changed in the Course, but you have. Now you're seeing those words from a different place. As the ego is undone, you're seeing the words differently, and you're understanding them on a deeper and deeper level. And as you undo the ego, the Holy Spirit is really taking care of the big part of the job. Our only responsibility, once again, the sole responsibility of the miracle worker, is to accept the atonement for himself. So you don't have to save the world. That's the Holy Spirit's job. And the Holy Spirit, according to the Course, devised a plan looking back from the end of time that permitted for everybody to wake up at a particular time. So we're all going to awaken. We're all going to the same place. Nobody's going to be left out. Even the people who you think don't deserve to go to heaven, because they're not going there as people. They're awakening from the idea of being a human being to the idea of being what they really are and where they really are. And this is why you have to think big. I said you have to replace the idea of illusion with something. Well, when you're having a normal conversation with someone, and you should have normal conversations with people. Don't forget how to be normal. Spiritual that you forget how to carry on a normal conversation with someone. Just do Buddha's middle way. He was very rich at the beginning of his life, and that didn't make him happy. And then he tried being an ascetic and renouncing the world and giving up everything, and that didn't make him happy either. So then he figured, okay, there's a middle way that I can go where I don't have to go to extremes. I don't have to try to be the richest man in the world, and I don't have to try to be the poorest man in the world. I can just be normal. And the great teacher of A Course in Miracles, Ken Wapnick, said the same thing. He said, don't forget how to be normal. So now you can live a normal life, and you can practice forgiveness at the same time. And then you're what the Course describes as above the battleground. When you're forgiving, you're not stuck in it. So you're looking at it from a different place now. You're looking at it with the Holy Spirit instead of the ego, and you get more and more prepared to forgive so that eventually, no matter what happens, you're ready to forgive.
But what forgiveness, you don't forgive a person. Do you forgive yourself? What do you forgive?
You're forgiving what the ego is showing you. You're not being taken in by appearances now. So, let's say someone is acting crazy, and they're insulting you, and they're, kind of like pushing your buttons and making you feel uncomfortable. that's when you need to realize that you're thinking with the ego and stop it. And start thinking with the Holy Spirit. And the Holy Spirit has a totally different story about what's happening. The ego wants a person, and you've got a real problem, and you've really got to take care of it. And the Holy Spirit is saying the opposite. The Holy Spirit is in the right part of your mind, reminding you that what you're seeing is not true, that what that person really is cannot be limited to the idea of being a body. And this is where you have to think kind of like outside the box. You know, you want to think big. Because what that person really is nothing less than God. You know, the Course teaches that spirit is not a partial attribute. So what that person really is not part of it, but all of it. Something that is bigger than the universe of time and space. Something that cannot be confined in any way to any shape or form. Something that is limitless.
So is it God in disguise?
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it, but it's not a very good disguise.
No, why not?
Because people will act crazy, and God is not crazy. And the ego is insane, according to the Course. You know, so people will call out for help and call out for love in some very strange ways. You know, like shooting 20 people. And our job is to overlook the craziness of that person and realize that that person may be confused about what they are, but we know better. You know, I know that what that person really is not that body that is acting crazy. What they really are is something that can't be confined like that. Something that is exactly the same as God, and they've never left heaven. That's why they're really innocent, even though they may not know it. I know it. And once you know the truth, then you want to live it. You want to live the truth. So Jesus could forgive anybody for anything, even when they seem to be destroying his own body. You know, he would forgive them. And, you know, today you have Christians who can't forgive people who have done nothing to them because they don't understand, and they're making it real in their mind. So now that person is really guilty and has really sinned and really deserves to be punished and really deserves to go to hell, and they have all these strange ideas. And the Course would say, no, the truth is they've never left heaven. That's why they're innocent. And that's why you're innocent. So I started to say, if you could get down deep enough into the unconscious mind, you would find out that there's really just one of us. That there's really just one ego appearing as many. Now, that's good news and that's bad news. The bad news is that because there's really just one of us, and because your unconscious mind knows everything, it's kind of like Carl Jung's collective unconscious. The unconscious mind knows everything, and it knows that there's really just one of us, because even the truth is buried there in the mind. That means that your unconscious mind will interpret anything that you think about another person to really be about you. Oh. And that's a pretty sobering thought. You know, people wonder why they're depressed. You know, they wonder why they're not happy in life. Just look at the garbage they've been thinking their whole lives about the world and about other people, because they didn't know that those thoughts were really just going to them, and that those thoughts would determine how they feel, and ultimately even what they believe they are. People are establishing their own identities right now. You know, so the Course says, once again, it's in that final section of the text, choose once again. It says, choose once again what you would have him be, knowing that every choice you make will establish your own identity as you will see it and believe that it is. So if you're thinking that somebody is guilty and that they really did it, your unconscious mind will interpret that to mean that you are really guilty, and that every bad thing that you think that you ever did, or any bad or unkind word that you ever said to anybody in your life really happened, and that you're really guilty. But if you can overlook the body, and the Course uses that word, overlook, several times. If you can overlook the illusion of the world, if you can overlook the body and realize that, you know, that there's a truth that is everywhere, that hasn't gone away, that is just beyond the veil, and it's really everywhere, and you can think of that person as being innocent because of what they really are, which is exactly the same as God, then that is how your unconscious mind is going to interpret you. And your unconscious mind will say, okay, you're innocent, you've never really left heaven, which is why you're innocent, and you haven't really done anything, and you are totally worthy of heaven and totally worthy of being with God. And that's the truth. And heaven was given to you as a gift by God. You don't have to earn it. You know, you don't have to earn your way back into heaven, like, Jesus' prodigal son story. You notice when the prodigal son was going home, he thought he was guilty. He says, "Oh, I've sinned before God, and I'm no longer worthy to be called his son." And what the prodigal son didn't realize, ideas about him. Why? As both the Bible and the Course in Miracles say, God is perfect love. But I think we need to understand the implications of that. If God is really perfect love, then all that it would know how to do would be to love. You know, if it knew how to be something else or do something else, it wouldn't be perfect love. If it could have imperfect thoughts, then it wouldn't be perfect. So God is still perfect, which is good news for us, because it gives us a perfect home to go home to. And all that we need to do through forgiveness is undo the ego, forgive everything that comes up in our mind or what we see on the screen, even what we see on television. You know, all the madness and the mayhem that we see on our TV screens.
Even Trump?
I hate to say it, but even Donald Trump really left heaven. He's confused about what he is. I mean, he thinks he's really the president, you know?
Yeah.
And
that's what people tell him.
Yeah, and the truth is, that's not what he is. And he may not awaken in this lifetime, but he will at some point. In fact, that's already been established. It's already been ordained by the Holy Spirit when each one will awaken from the dream. Of course, miracle students will awaken from the dream in this lifetime and attain enlightenment. And my teachers in my fourth book told me that I may very likely do that in this lifetime, and I think that my wife Cindy will also. And we were, scheduled in the ego